24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Middle Path Radio, your Islamic companion.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to another evening of Straight Talk here at Middle Path Radio. Tonight we will be discussing a forgotten conflict. This has been going on since 1947. This is the ongoing conflict in Kashmir, which sometimes we overlook due to overwhelming realities in the Muslim world. We will be discussing the historical background, the dynamics of the conflict, and the latest attacks by the Indian Army. So stay with us, inshallah, and contribute to this show. We have with us tonight our special guest, Brother Muhammad Atif, who has been giving seminars and talks, creating awareness for this situation that is unfolding at this moment in time. You can call or text us on 074 77080 or you can also tweet us, which is at Middle Path Radio. So let me start with Brother Atif. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Wa alaikum salam, brother.
People vaguely know that there is a conflict in Pakistan, in Kashmir. Can you give us a historical account of how it all started and up to the recent conflict, inshallah?
Well, brother, I think it's true. Not many people, I think particularly the younger generation, are actually aware of what's actually going on in Kashmir. But this dispute has really arisen since the partition of 1947 of India and Pakistan. Mm-hmm. And as you know, the two-nation theory, it was the whole point was that Muslims should have their own homeland. And Kashmir, being overwhelmingly Muslim, mm-hmm. by right should have gone to Pakistan. And this is basically at the heart of this dispute, that they didn't allow Kashmir, the Indian state, the Indian government at the time, basically on the invitation of the Maharaja, mm-hmm. Maharaja Hari Singh, mm-hmm. he basically said, instead of joining Pakistan, we want to join India. India basically moved in with its armed forces, and basically it prevented Kashmir from joining Pakistan. So that's basically the core dispute. Since that time, the UN has even passed a number of resolutions, the Security Council, that there should be a plebiscite, which is like a referendum, so that the people of Kashmir can decide what they should want to do. Mm. But that has never taken place because the Indian government doesn't allow that to take place. So that is really the essential basis of this dispute.
So why doesn't the Indian government allow that to take place?
Well, naturally, because I think it knows it will lose that referendum. It will lose that plebiscite. And for the Indian state, it doesn't want to lose that strategic chunk of land, really, because it's at the foothills of the Himalayan mountains. It's next to China. It's effectively India's gateway towards Central Asia. Okay. So it has a great strategic value, and ultimately, aside from the strategic value, if India was to lose Kashmir, then I think, given India's political circumstances and the disputes that it has within India, other separatist and cessationist movements, if it gives Kashmir away, then those other states will demand cessation from India as well. So that would mean a big political problem for India.
Do you know what? I didn't introduce our regular contributor, Abdus. That's what happens. Sometimes you just forget. But when you concentrate too much on the special guest, that's what happens.
Brother, I'm not too special.
Jazakallah khair. And Abdus, obviously, what's your what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, as the brother said, this is an ongoing conflict since 1947, and the dispute is there still. But to be quite honest, I mean, in this show, I think I will have more questions rather than
good.
thing. What I want to understand, there's actually 3 parts to Kashmir, as I understand. Part is administered by Pakistan. Mm-hmm. And I would like to know what the situation there is and how the people...
China actually has a certain claim to that as well, isn't it?
China actually has a part of Kashmir.
Okay.
Kashmir obviously was one territory. And the interesting fact about Kashmir is that it never belonged to India. I mean, prior to partition in 1947, obviously the British were in India. And basically before that, it was under Muslim rule for 500 years. And it was only up until about in the year 1819 that there was a Sikh warrior called Ranjit Singh who basically attacked, and he basically was able to capture Kashmir. And but what happened was that the British then basically defeated Ranjit Singh, and under the Treaty of Amritsar in 1849, they actually sold it to somebody called Gulab Singh, and and this Maharaja Hari Singh is basically his grandson in 1947. So this is the kind of context of Kashmir. So what happened was that in 1947, when the partition took place, effectively, really, the Maharajas schemed not to. He basically had no intention of Kashmir joining with Pakistan, and they basically encouraged killings of Muslims to take place at that time. And
the rulers at that time.
Yes, they encouraged, because people were effectively, they were moving from east to west and west to east. So the Hindus and the Sikhs were moving towards India. The Muslims who wanted to be in Pakistan were moving the other way. And basically, there was a lot of obviously, discord at that time. And unfortunately, some people, the Hindus and the Sikhs, they took the bait. And they basically, these killings started. It was basically primarily driven by the Maharaja. So what happened was that the tribes in the northwestern frontier of Pakistan, as it's now known as Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, these tribes also came to the aid of the Muslims in Kashmir, and they managed to actually liberate a part of Kashmir, and that part of Kashmir is now known as Azad Kashmir today. And
is that the part that's occupied by Pakistan or Pakistani army?
It's administered by Pakistan, and when we characterize, you've used the word occupation. When we characterize the word occupation, I think we need to contrast the situation in Jammu and Kashmir, which is occupied by India, and Azad Kashmir, which is administered by Pakistan. India has hundreds of thousands of security forces in its part of Kashmir. Pakistan also has forces in Azad Kashmir, but those forces are facing off at the border between the Indian Kashmir, and Azad Kashmir, which is known as the line of control. So those Pakistani forces are facing off against those Indian forces, but those Indian security forces, they're not just facing off against the Pakistani troops. The Indian government is using them to effectively put down and harass and intimidate the Muslims in Kashmir, the Muslim population. If you have seen recent events after Burhan Wani was killed, he was murdered on 8th of July, just after Eid al-Fitr. And basically people have protested about it because he was a very charismatic young popular leader in Kashmir, and basically the Indian army has been very brutal in its response to those protests, and we've seen crowd control methods around the world. What the Indian army is resorting to is to use pellet guns. It's like a shotgun, so they just fire this shot out at the crowds, and basically is blinding those protesters.
A lot of the youngsters, you can actually, like what you said, you can actually go on to Google it, and you will see a lot of the pictures.
That's right, absolutely, you will see that. And so many of these young, these young Muslims, they've lost sight in either one or both eyes, and the last count, this was over 700. Subhanallah. If you think about that, they've lost eyesight in either one eye or both eyes, and so this is horrific. So how can you're not seeing that in the Azad Kashmir? You don't have nothing like that kind of situation. And the fact is that the Indian army is not welcome in Kashmir, and the Indians are only there by force. And as I said, people, the number of troops that are estimated to be there, even Amnesty, there's a famous Indian journalist, Andruti Roy. She said that there's 700,000 Indian security forces in Kashmir right now. That's a huge number when you consider the size of the Indian army, which is about 1.2 million. Nearly 700,000 of its forces are in Kashmir, in Azad Kashmir. That's how important it is to India to hold on to, not Azad Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir.
Why is it important for them to hold on? I know you briefly touched on that, but
I think
what benefits are they getting from there? Is there resources or?
Obviously, the land has a strategic position, but I think this is actually, if you look at it from a political context, India is actually, not a unified country. Every people, they come together and they work together. But, when you look at India, it's not just the Muslims that it's really oppressing. And we can see what it's doing to the Muslims in Kashmir. It discriminates against other minorities as well. And I'm not just talking, and I'm talking about, the Sikhs. They had a movement for Khalistan in the Indian Punjab, which the Indian government put down very brutally. And they raided the Golden Temple.
Golden Temple,
that's right,
yeah.
in Amritsar in 1984. And after which Indira Gandhi was assassinated by her own Sikh bodyguard, because such was, the level of hatred for this woman, for what she had done. And then we've seen Christians being attacked simply, for who they are. And then it's just the Hindu caste system itself. They have this segmentation of Hindus based on what family they've been born in, what their family lineage, and that basically then defines what their rights are. So the ruling class in India tends to be the very small minority Brahmin Hindu class, no more than about 5%. But the vast majority of the Hindus are very poor. India has a lot of poverty, and what's happened is, because of this. This is although the Indian Constitution outlaws this caste system, in practice is very much alive. And the fact is that when you have this institutionalized system which has existed for over 4,000 years, people are going to rebel against that. And then we've seen that the poverty, we're seeing the problems with free market economics around the world. India is no exception to that.
So what you've said is a political thing.
In answer to your question, brother, the problem is, what I'm actually trying to say is this: India has many separatist movements in India today. India has about 30 separatist movements. You have the Naxalite Maoist rebels in central India all the way to West India. Then you have the states next to Bangladesh, Assam, what are known the Seven Sister States. And then you have the Tamils in Tamil Nadu. All of these states are actually fighting for their independence from India. So now, can you imagine if you give Kashmir Azadi? What would happen to the rest of these people?
They will
all demand their separate. This is the problem for the Indian government. And the fundamental problem that the Indian government has, it has no cohesive ideas to bring the people together. This is the problem. They don't have anything to bind the people. They've adopted their secular ideas. They've adopted free market economics, their capitalist solutions. But you know what? That capitalism has only brought about a huge poverty in India. They have something like 111 billionaires, and on average these people have $3 billion of wealth. Wow. But there's 75% of the Indian population, they live on just about $2.50 a day.
I've been reading some stuff. There seems to be some argument that India is much more representative to minorities and things like that compared to Muslim majority states, and they're talking about politicians who are Muslim at very high levels in other industries and so on and so forth. How would you answer that?
I think it's a very interesting question which you've posed, Brother Abdus. The Indian government proclaims itself as the world's largest democracy, and it is a democracy. It's had a democratic government since 1947. But in my opinion, what really this democratic government has done in India is just simply given representation to the different groups of people it has in India today. So you have the Muslims, you have the Sikhs, and then you have the other various minorities there. But it hasn't brought those people together. If you have good governance,
when you say that, do you mean is there conflicts between those people?
Well, there's conflicts, amongst Hindus. Let's put the Muslims aside. These groups don't feel as if they have a stake in India today. If they had a stake in India today, then they wouldn't be picking up arms, they wouldn't be picking up guns and fighting the Indian state, as we see, for example, with the Maoist rebels. These are communist rebels. They've rejected the Indian government's legitimate writ, its legitimacy. And, fundamentally, the reason for that is very simply because the Indian government is also not ensuring their rights. So, for example, it's allowed these big businessmen to, the forests, India has vast forests, to go in there and just take their natural resources. And the people are just, they feel their homeland's being exploited, and they're not accepting that. So, yes, you have democracy in India, but it doesn't bring the people together. It just simply, in my opinion, it just simply enhances the divisions between the people.
Okay, many of our listeners might be wondering why we are discussing Kashmir when there are so many major conflicts. For example, you've got Syria, you've got Iraq, and you've got Palestine. How important is Kashmir to the Ummah?
I think, brother, I think every conflict is important to the Ummah. I think Syria is very important. I think Iraq's very important. I think Burma's very important. The sad fact is, I could actually list out many number of conflicts that are important. But the reason why I feel that we need to talk about Kashmir at this point, first of all, I don't think many people are aware of what's actually going on in Kashmir. So I think we have a duty to raise this voice for Kashmir. And the Kashmiri Muslims are undergoing a brutal occupation right now, and this has only increased in the last few months because of the murder of Burhan Wani, the protests that the people have done. And it's our duty to actually recognize and see what's actually going on, because Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir has a population of 10 million people, of which nearly 80% are Muslim. And these people are being subjugated by the Indian army. I mean, if you look at the numbers involved here, you're looking at one Indian soldier for every 16 people.
Wow.
And, some of the atrocities that have been carried out, I mean, we were talking about, Indian democracy. But this Indian democracy has passed legislation known as the Armed Forces Special Powers Act in 1990, where it gives the right to the Indian soldier to basically shoot on sight, arrest without charge,
or torture or rape. I think these are
these are the consequences, because if you give your soldiers the right to arrest somebody, to raid somebody's homes without warrants, without judicial oversight, then of course what you're really doing is giving a license for abuse, and there has been much abuse in Kashmir.
Do you think this abuse? There are NGOs in Kashmir.
Yes, certainly. I mean, just last year, one of the directors of Amnesty International said that 5th of July will mark the 25-year anniversary of this Armed Forces Special Powers Act. And he said not a single Indian soldier has been brought to trial for the atrocities that they have been committed in Kashmir. And the atrocities are vast. You talked about, brother, why we're talking about Kashmir. Thousands of Kashmiri Muslim women are have been raped. And the Indian army is using this as a weapon of war, because it is collectively punishing the Muslims for rejecting Indian rule. And as a Muslim, we have a duty to care for our sisters, our brothers, and for the children in Kashmir. We have to be their voice, because they have no voice.
On a personal note, have you or your family been personally affected by this conflict? Because I know you're from Pakistan.
Brother, what I would say is I've personally not been affected, but I have been affected by the outcome of what's happened in 1947. My family was originally from Jalandhar in India, and during partition they lost everything, and we just my forefathers they literally just had their lives, and they migrated to Pakistan at that time. Such was the atmosphere. So this is something which I feel very much. I recognize that we have been fortunate in that sense that we didn't endure this suffering, but I think the main thing is that when we look at Kashmir, when we look at the disputes in Syria, for example, I have no personal relation with anyone in Syria, but I feel for those Muslims who are enduring this brutal oppression from Assad, from the bombardment from Russia. As Muslims, the Prophet ﷺ said that if one part of the body aches, then the rest of the body has a fever, and this is the viewpoint that we need to have here.
Absolutely. Abdus, do you have anything to say? You can.
No,
I'm
finding it very interesting. I mean, this is really good. I mean, I'm learning a lot of facts.
You're not known for being quiet or silent. But anyway, I want to talk about the international communities, their response to this. Do you think there's a media blackout?
I think the world's media has chosen to ignore what is actually going on in Kashmir. I mean, let me ask you. You switch on the news, you switch on BBC News, you switch on CNN, you switch on Sky News. Have any of them talked about Kashmir?
No.
Is it prime time headline on any of them?
Not at all.
Not at all. This is the thing. I mean, I've been doing some research, and really, there's not much. Al Jazeera is old news. They've got some stats. That's it, really.
I think you as an individual, you would have to search hard on Google to see what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And this is actually the sad truth, that really the world's media has ignored what's actually going on in Kashmir. And really the reason why the world's media has ignored it is because governments around the world have ignored it. I mean, for example, the British Prime Minister Theresa May just visited India last week, and she took a large delegation with her. Did we hear any statement from Theresa May about Kashmir?
No.
About the atrocities? She met the Indian ruler Narendra Modi. Not a single word. So, in my opinion, the facts are clear for us to see. The world's media, the world governments around the world, such as the British government, such as the American government, they've chosen to ignore the plight of the Kashmiri people. They've left them to their fate. And the sad fact is that those people are undergoing enormous abuse, but nobody is saying anything about what's actually going on.
Okay. And so what do you think the India or the West intends to achieve from this conflict?
I think ultimately the Indian government would like to suppress the Kashmiri independence movement. If we were to think in terms of objectives, its objective would be to subdue and end the political separatist call for independence in Kashmir. But that is not going to happen. Those Kashmiri, they're Muslim, they understand what's going on. They've been abused, and they are being abused. If somebody comes and abuses your family, you're not going to hold out your hand and ask for friendship with that person.
Absolutely. So I want to look at Pakistan, actually. Do you think Pakistan has washed its hands off Kashmir, as it already has many internal issues that we can see? Is it something that concerns you?
One Pakistani leader after the other, whether it's been a military ruler, whether it's been a democratic prime minister, every one of these people have said that Kashmir is Pakistan's jugular vein. And in the past, at least, we've seen Pakistan go to war with India. And
the tension was there, isn't it?
The tension has been there, and we have seen Pakistan go to war during 1947, 1948, when Azad Kashmir was liberated, and then during 1965, and then even 1971 as well, and most recently in the Kargil conflict as well in 1999. But the sad fact is, the Pakistani rulers, right? We can see what's going on in Kashmir. We can see these Indian forces killing and blinding Muslims in Kashmir, raping our sisters in Kashmir. But the Pakistani government, it has been silent. And the question that we have to ask is that, are the rulers of Pakistan blind to what is actually going on in Kashmir? Are they deaf? Can they not hear the screams for help coming from Kashmir?
But someone could argue that Pakistan has so much on its plate at this moment because of the drones and the internal weaknesses, really. How would you argue that? Because it's true, it's got so much on. Terrorist attack and a lot of these things last 10 years.
I would say, brother, that most of this is the making of Pakistan's rulers themselves. They have created these situations with their own hands. If the Pakistani government, the Pakistani regime, did not join hands with America in its U.S. terror war, its war of terror, in helping it to occupy Afghanistan, many of these problems would not be there in Pakistan.
Yeah. Do you think Pakistan is weak at this moment?
I think Pakistan is politically weak, but I think militarily it has a strong military, and unfortunately they haven't done their duty in helping to liberate Kashmir.
But you've got India, which is a nuclear power, Pakistan, which is a nuclear power. Don't you think that's the issue, that it's difficult to do anything, maneuver because of?
I think this. Well, it hasn't stopped India from violating the Kashmiri people
That's right.
So
Absolutely.
why should that be a reason for Pakistan to hold back?
But India doesn't have bombings every day, because obviously America, we can see that America is bombing a lot of and they've got Afghanistan issue and Taliban. It's so much. It's very complicated. India is quite. It's actually progressive. It's doing very well.
Brother, I would actually disagree with you on that.
Okay.
I like I said that.
I want disagreement.
Yeah,
so.
no. This situation that Pakistan finds itself in today is the making. It's created this situation itself. General Pervez Musharraf, who was the ruler in 2001 when 9/11 happened, America demanded the provision of bases, logistics, and intelligence support. Pakistan had a choice at that time, and it still has a choice today. Many people may not be aware, but the supply lines for the American troops, NATO forces, run through Pakistan. If Pakistan wanted to eject America from the region, it simply can cut those supply lines, and that would end the American occupation of Afghanistan. These terrorist attacks which you've spoken about in Pakistan, let me tell you something, brother. An American CIA agent called Raymond Davis was captured red-handed in 2011 after he murdered 2 Pakistanis on the streets of Lahore. What was a CIA agent doing roaming around in Pakistan and Lahore? Many people ask this question today. Many people don't believe when the Pakistani government says that these are terrorist attacks occurring by this X and by this XYZ. Many people actually believe that these are being orchestrated in conjunction with the Americans to create the public opinion so that the Pakistanis can carry out military operations in the tribal areas next to Afghanistan, thereby denying space to the people who are opposing the American occupation. This is what's actually going on. This is actually something which actually happened during the Vietnam War. The Americans, they could not deal with the resistance that they faced in Vietnam, that they started bombing Cambodia, which is bordered Vietnam, because the rebels who were fighting the Americans actually sought refuge in Cambodia. Same thing is happening with Afghanistan and tribal areas. The people are fighting the American occupation. They are using the tribal areas as their bases, and the Americans, because of political reasons, cannot actually walk into Pakistan and actually try to fight those people. So they need somebody else to do that job to fight for them, and the contractor for that is the Pakistani government. So this is the context of what is going on. They've helped create this. They're trying to create this public opinion that you have this terrorism problem. There was no terrorism problem in Pakistan before 2001. It only started
after the invasion,
and it really accelerated. If you look at the statistics, it really accelerated in 2008 when the Zarda. Why can't they do that today? And when we talk about India being a nuclear power, Pakistan being a nuclear power, we need to look at the context here. This is not an ordinary war between India and Pakistan. The Indians are occupiers in Kashmir. They have been rejected by the people. The people are upright. They have risen against them. This is why you see...
And that's the majority Muslims.
This is the majority Muslim. This is why you see young boys going out and fighting Indian troops. They don't have anything. They just have stones. They just have their iman. They just have their bravery to go and stand up and protest against this brutal Indian occupation. Do you think that if there was an external force which helped those people, do you think the Indian army would actually survive in holding on to Kashmir? It would not survive. That is a land that deserves liberation. India has no legitimacy. The Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, in a radio broadcast on the 3rd of November 1947, he actually pledged that we will let the Kashmiri people decide their own fate, whether to join India or to Pakistan. He said, this is a pledge that we make in front of the world. These were his words.
So how someone could easily ask, so where is the UN? I mean, if this is a pledge and this is a majority Muslims, then why does not the UN, do they not have any kind of, I don't know, I'm a bit frustrated, you can see.
This is a very good question. This is the $1 million question. Why is it? I would like to ask that question as well. I would like an answer to this question as well. Why is it that the United Nations doesn't do anything for the Muslims of Kashmir? And let me give you an example. I don't know if many of your listeners have heard of a region called East Timor in Indonesia. East Timor, very similar situation where it was actually there was a Christian population, and the UN passed resolutions that there should be a plebiscite. And you know what? Within 3 years, it actually happened. And I believe in 1999, it actually got its independence from Indonesia. It was done. The Australia, the Western powers, they worked for that, and it was implemented. In the UN, with Kashmir, there's no political will to get it done.
What's frustrating is that, the Muslim countries, the Muslim rulers that we have, that they would seek resolution from UN on everything else. So they would, whatever they do, UN is there to make sure that it's done properly. But when it comes to this, it's just there's nothing really, isn't it?
This is what I say. UN is just a talking shop for the Muslims. It's just a talking shop, but really, it's actually a tool that is set up by Western powers to really.
It's a rubber stamp.
Exactly. This is what it is. So really, all the political agendas that pass through UN comes from ideological powers that actually govern world politics today. And you're talking about United States. You're talking about Britain. You're talking about EU, and this is what it is. So, and this is exactly the reason why you won't see anything for Kashmir, but you will see something like East Timor, like Brother said, within the map.
Let me just put, highlight this particular issue. Narendra Modi, the history of this man has such a dirty history. He's a member of he used to be, and I believe he still is a lifelong member of the Rashtriya Swam. I've such a long name, the RSS. It's a very long name. This is a very right-wing Hindu extremist organization, and this man, when the riots took place in Gujarat in 2002, not only did he do nothing to actually stop the killings of the Muslims who were killed, who were slaughtered, he actually, he was actually asked about this. He said, I feel the same level of pain that, you feel when a small puppy comes underneath your car, when a dog comes underneath your car. SubhanAllah, these are the words of this man. And this man was actually denied a visa for many years by the United States itself. So when we talk about now, this man has his hands drenched in Muslim blood. This is why he feels he's indifferent to what's actually going on in Kashmir. His army is raping and murdering and pillaging in Kashmir today. But the unfortunate truth is that, Western powers, Western governments, they're more interested in striking trade deals with India. Theresa May was there last year. Yep. You've got Donald Trump. He sees India as a friend. And partly that's driven, when we look at the politics of the region, China is increasing its military strength. The Americans are more interested in containing Chinese power. The Americans are not strong enough to do that themselves. This is the actual reality. So they need partners, and one of the partners that they're looking for is India. This is why they're not interested in Kashmir, because they don't want to upset the Indian government.
What would you say to those Muslims? Because there are a lot of Muslim even organizations that are actually also seeking solutions through the United Nations.
I think given what's actually happened in the world in the last 15 years after 2001, did America actually go to the UN when it wanted to invade Iraq?
Nope.
It ignored Iraq. It ignored the UN. And I think it's naive for us to think that the UN can do anything for any of these causes. I mean, for example, has it done anything for Palestine?
As far as I'm aware, it created the problem of Palestine.
Well, it basically, it is doing nothing to ease the pain and suffering of the Muslims in Palestine. It is doing nothing for the Muslims in Kashmir. It is doing nothing in Syria. Frankly, wherever there's a Muslim population which is suffering, it is doing nothing. It's sitting on its hands. It's like you said earlier, brother. The UN is a talking shop. It's a rubber stamp for Western powers when they want to rubber stamp their own colonial agendas, their own colonial adventures. Then they come to the UN, they rubber stamp it, and they hold it up to the rest of the world that, look, we've got a UN resolution to do this.
I'm going to take some questions, inshallah. So we said, look, we've got a text here. It says, sometimes we're quick to blame the Western nations and the rulers, yet our own Muslim rulers are doing nothing. Why are the Muslims not accounting our rulers? Why are Muslim nations silent? That's one text. And another text, he said, I'm so glad you are discussing about Kashmir. It almost feels like the Ummah forgot about them. My question is, since there are so many conflicts, how do we keep up to date with all that? feels so much. Didn't finish the text, so how do we? There's so many conflicts. How do we keep up with
well,
this?
I think these are very good questions. I think the first question which one of your listeners has sent, it's not a question about blaming Western rulers as such. I agree with that. We need to look at our rulers. What are they doing? And frankly, I think everyone can see the Muslim rulers are doing nothing for their people, and they don't deserve to be rulers, frankly. And we also know from Islam that really, at the end of the day, we actually need one ruler. And this relates to the second question: how do we keep up with how do we keep up with these conflicts?
Yeah.
The sad fact is that there's an endless list of these conflicts, and it just keeps on growing. There's Yemen. We talked about Syria, we've talked about Iraq, there's Yemen, there's a war going on there, Saudis are bombing it, the British and the Americans are giving it weapons, logistics and military support. So really we have to look at we have to put our own house in order.
Yeah.
We have to put our own house in order.
I mean, what I get is from this text is, we're desensitized from all of this because we see so much conflict. It's just another one. It's just another number, another conflict. Really, isn't it?
It's unfortunate that unfortunately, it can become like that. But we have to think, what does Islam require us to do? Because Islam doesn't just see this as another statistic. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was doing tawaf around the Kaaba, and he praised the Kaaba. But he also said that how splendid you are, but in the sight of Allah, a single drop of a single Muslim blood is more important to Allah than the Kaaba itself. When we think of that, can we imagine if somebody did something to the Kaaba, if somebody attacked the Kaaba, we would feel very agitated, we would feel very upset. But here is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying to us that the blood of a single Muslim is more important than the Kaaba. And we have to remind ourselves of this.
Okay.
We have to think about this.
If you just joined us, we're discussing Kashmir, the problem of Kashmir, the crisis that's recently we're seeing in the media, well, not in the main media, but on the web and social media. We can see a lot of those images and articles that are circulating. So please do ring us, get in touch. See what if there's anything that you want to know, you want to ask Brother Atif here. You can ring us 074-77-080-248. I'm going to quickly go for another text. I think this text is quite important. It's very it's what I wanted to discuss. It says, I want to know what can Pakistan practically do to liberate Kashmir. That's the text, the question that we've got.
Okay. The solution for Kashmir is very simple. A state has to liberate the people in Kashmir. And, Kashmir has a very powerful state next to it. It's called Pakistan. Pakistan has a very strong military. And the Pakistan army needs to do its duty to actually free and liberate the Kashmiri Muslims. There are military officers in Pakistan who have literally drawn up plans, that they can liberate Kashmir within 2 to 3 days.
Subhanallah.
2 to 3 days. They have that military capability, and they have, most importantly, they have the moral right, is morally right, and they have all that's lacking is the political will in Pakistan. That is the missing ingredient. You have the capability, you have the moral argument. The only thing that's missing is the political will.
How do you create this? I mean,
I think the people have to demand a solution for Kashmir. Pakistanis in Pakistan, Pakistanis abroad, other Muslims around the world. We have to add our voice to this call. We have to demand a solution for Kashmir. And if the Pakistani leadership is incompetent or incapable of doing that, then we need to really look for, we need to work for a solution which actually replaces this corrupt and incompetent leadership.
What's the sensation of Pakistan at this moment? Do you think there's a big, are people quite silent now? Are they silent because of the reality, or?
I think people who've been if you've been following events in Pakistan, just literally a couple of weeks ago, Imran Khan attempted to do a lockdown of Islamabad. Just as before he failed to remove Nawaz Sharif, and many people have become disheartened with Imran Khan and his antics. Frankly, that because he gives the call. He talks about corruption. He talks about removing the corrupt regime of Nawaz Sharif. He says the system is corrupt. But you know what? He says all of that, and then right at the 11th hour, he then stops. And in this case, it was because the Supreme Court of Pakistan has announced a commission where it's going to investigate Nawaz Sharif and his family over alleged corruption. So, many people are, they ask themselves, well, where was the Supreme Court for the last 70 years? Was it, was it asleep? Was it asleep at the wheel? The fact is that people are sick and tired of these excuses, and they're sick and tired of people like Imran Khan who make these excuses, and they deliberately mislead the people.
So is Pakistan a democracy?
Yes, absolutely. Pakistan is a democracy. And even Imran Khan, these are Imran Khan's words. He said that, this Supreme Court Commission is actually an example of the maturing of democracy in Pakistan. And this is what democracy is. Just because Pakistan is poor doesn't mean to say that it's not a democracy. I mean, if we look at America, America has elected Donald Trump. And, people, this is after, very often, sometimes, people who believe in secularism in Pakistan, they very often make this argument that, Pakistan needs to be given a chance. It needs to have a clear run at democracy. Well, I would like to pose this question. Well, why is it that in America, after nearly 250 years of democracy, why is it that someone like Donald Trump can come to power in America? So, really, we need to pause and think that what is this democratic process? In Islam is all for people having the right to vote and elect their leader. But the question is that, once you voted, as the American people have, what's now going to happen over the next 4 years in the democratic process? And the answer is in this, what's actually going to happen in America over the next 4 years, just as the case is in Pakistan, as in India, as in any other democracy, is that the rulers themselves are going to have the right to decide what the laws are. They are going to legislate. They can create legislation themselves. And this is very distinct. This is very distinct and different from Islam. As I said, Islam is all for people having the right to elect the ruler, as we saw with the Khulafa Rashidin, and the bay'ah has to be given. But the fact is that in Islam, you do not have the right to create your own laws. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the Sharia. And this is the fundamental difference between democracy and the Islamic system.
I'm going to read a couple more texts. If I do miss any of them, please. It's most probably we've covered those. I've got a text here. It says, Islam is the second largest religion in India, with 14.2% of the country's population. 172 million. Other millions of Muslims, or the huge Bollywood Muslim as they would like to call themselves, doing to pressure the Indians. So what are they doing to pressure the Indian government?
Well, first of all, I think the listener has cited a figure of 172 million. I think that figure is underplayed by the Indian government deliberately, because I don't know if many people are aware, but just a few days ago, this disgusting man, Narendra Modi, said that, I want to ban triple talaq in India. And the reason he gave for that is because I don't want my Muslim sister to suffer any injustice. And it makes you laugh, and it would make you laugh if the situation wasn't so terrible. His army is currently going and raping and murdering in Kashmir. So is this man really concerned about what is actually happening to a Muslim woman in India? Of course not. This is actually just rhetoric. And the unfortunate truth is, as part of the Hindutva movement in India, one of the things that they fear is that the growing Muslim numbers in India. And this is one of the reasons why they actually want to reform Muslim personal law, because as we know, Islam gives the Muslim man the right to have more than one wife. They actually see it as a form of birth control. If you reduce the number of wives, you will have less Muslims, and therefore you can control the Muslim population. So the Muslims in India are already on the back foot. They're already being discriminated against. And we've seen in states like Haryana, where they have this ban on beef. They have these kind of extremist mobs.
Hindu mobs.
Exactly. They've gone around accusing Muslims, you've been trading or eating beef, and they have beaten up and even killed Muslims. Just on the BBC, there was a report in September how a 14-year-old Muslim girl was raped and beaten by a mob as well, along with her cousin, and they killed her aunt and uncle simply because she was accused of eating beef. So if this is the situation of the Muslims in India today, how are they going to stand up for the Muslims of Kashmir? It's very difficult for them to stand up for the Muslims of Kashmir. They can't stand up for their own rights at the moment.
I want to take another text. I think this is very nice one actually. It says, Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, when Kashmir gets liberated, what will be its future? Another secular state?
Well, this is actually a very interesting question, because really this whole problem of Kashmir, liberating it is really just half the solution. Because what are we going to do? Are we going to rid Kashmir of the despotism, the corruption of Narendra Modi in New Delhi, only for it to be replaced by the corruption of Nawaz Sharif in Islamabad? We can see what the state of the Muslims in Pakistan is today. The people are poor and they're suffering. So this can only be one part of the solution, the liberation of Kashmir. What we actually need is a comprehensive solution. And that comprehensive solution can only come about when we replace the democratic system in Pakistan, which is corrupt, where it allows businessmen like Nawaz Sharif to use their money to infiltrate and control the system. We've seen that in America. A billionaire has just become its president, because he has the money, he has the influence and the power to manipulate the democratic system. We actually need to get rid of this system in Pakistan. We actually need the return of the Khilafah system and implement the Islamic system.
So you mean the Islamic ruling system?
Absolutely.
Yeah? Okay. Let me... that's a very interesting point that you've made, because if you look at even Palestine, that when they're calling for the liberation, they're standing up or calling for Palestinians, the Palestine entity. I mean, this is the problem with the Muslim world. Is nationalism is something that is actually when they look for solutions, this is something what they call for.
I would say this, that I think that is a percentage of the Muslim population which is doing that. But Alhamdulillah, Muslims around the world are becoming, they're becoming aware of their deen. They're becoming aware of their deen, and they're becoming aware of the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, "Leave aside nationalism." This is what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. So I don't see it as a Palestinian Muslim. I see him as a Muslim in Palestine, and that's how increasingly Muslims around the world are seeing it. And this is why we're seeing this revival in Islamic thoughts, Islamic emotions, and Islamic sentiments. And this is why we've seen governments, Western governments, become extremely anxious over this revival that we're seeing in the Muslim world, and they're struggling to contain this emotion, which is why they've created these the pretext of the war on terror, because their puppets in the Muslim world are actually failing them. They're actually failing to control the Muslim population, so they now feel that they now have to physically go in themselves and try to control these Muslim populations. So I actually believe, inshallah, that the Muslim world is heading in the right direction. It's a painful process, but it's heading in the right direction.
Yeah, but someone could argue that, look, even if 40 years or 60 years, how long it's been the conflict, how do we see progress? Because we really, as we see at this present moment, we're actually going back. The Muslim world is being occupied, there's wars, poverty is rampant. Really, you're painting a very...
a glossy picture. I think the situation is, of course, like you highlight, it is very difficult. But when we're talking about revival, we're talking about the Muslims, how they're looking at the current situation, what they're proposing as the solution. And when you're talking about like nationalistic movements and things like this, in my perception, so the way I look at it, I think that type of thinking is on the decline, where now Muslims are looking beyond this nationalistic framework of solutions. I mean, if you see all these conflicts, you see across the world, Muslims are raising concerns. Muslims are connecting with, like we're talking about Syria, like the brother said earlier. We have no personal relationship with anybody in Syria, but why is it that Muslims here in the UK, in the United States,
how many Syrians are there
in
here in the UK?
other countries, why is it that they're making it such a big issue? And this goes to show that actually, as Muslims, nationalism has nothing to do with our religion. We are one body, one ummah.
But I would also add this. I think the brothers, touched on a very good point here. But let's look at the concept of democracy today. Many people now, you see them using the term Islamic democracy. Let me ask you this: we know the great history of the Khulafa and the Khulafa Rashidin and the Khulafa, but how can anybody cite for me an example of an Islamic democracy from the past? And when I say democracy, I mean where you're actually having a majlis or a parliament where politicians are creating the laws. This is what I mean by democracy here, not just the right just to vote. And what I'm actually trying to allude to here is this: politicians like Imran Khan in Pakistan today are using the term Islamic democracy, Islamic welfare state, and he actually even refers to the Khilafah Rashidin as his model. Why is it in Tunisia we also have the Nada movement, which talks about Islamic democracy? Why don't they just say democracy? Why do they have to tag it with the word Islamic democracy when there's no precedence of democracy?
I mean, they do give a definition. They say it's shura, it's consultation, it's voting. You vote someone in, but I think when it comes to legislative
silent.
That's where
this is the difference. Yeah. It's the legislation which is the difference, and if you question these people, then they will be boxed in a corner at that point. If we ask them this question, where is your legislation going to come from? This is the key difference.
I think that's where the missing link is. That it's actually legislation.
It's the legislation
that they don't talk about.
How do you make your laws? How will you make the laws to run your society, to run your government? This is the key question. So when we see these politicians referring to Islam, Islamic democracy, you can see why are they doing that? Why are they doing that? Because when Atatürk abolished the Khilafah in 1924, he didn't talk about an Islamic democracy. He talked about a secular system. But we're now seeing politicians. We see Erdogan in Turkey. He also now talks about an Islamic democracy. Atatürk didn't talk about that in 1924. He wanted to get rid of Islam. He even got rid of the Arabic scripture and all these other aspects of Islam. So from this we can tell this is empirical evidence of the revival of Islam, that these politicians are using Islamic terminology to try to effectively contain and fool the people.
That's right.
Contain and fool the people. This is what they're trying to do. This is what Imran Khan is doing in Pakistan. He's attempting to fool the people.
Do you think because the people are looking at alternatives and that's why they're saying you can have Islamic democracy?
Well, let me put it to you this way, brother. If 40% of the people in Pakistan cannot even feed themselves properly every day, and they see this man Nawaz Sharif sitting in his opulent palace in Raiwind, and if tomorrow somebody comes along and declares a Khilafah and the Khalifa is there, do you really think they're going to object?
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you really think they're going to object? I don't think so. So I think the Muslims are aware of their deen. They know that in our deen, can somebody even contemplate when somebody tells them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no role in your life? Can anybody even contemplate that? Because this is what secularism tells you, that the affairs of the state, give to Caesar what is to Caesar, and Islam has no say.
I think it's this disguise, isn't it? I think what you've just said, and this is what is fooling the Muslims really.
It has fooled the Muslims up until this point, but I think that mask is slipping now. I think the people in Pakistan, certainly the people are Islamic. Tomorrow, if there's a change for Islam, they will not object to that change.
I think my concern is nationalism, and I've always said that, because this is something that is very difficult to get rid of. If you look at Pakistan, I remember when Afghanistan was attacked, Parvez Musharraf, he said, "Look, that's nothing to do with us." Yeah.
Well,
Pakistan comes first.
Pakistan ka matlab kya? La ilaha illallah. Every Pakistani knows that. And Musharraf was a man who, he was a man who hated Islam really well and truly, because this is why he collaborated with America to attack the Muslims in Afghanistan and to occupy Afghanistan. And
someone could argue, well, he didn't have a choice.
Well,
then America could easily come and attack Pakistan.
Pakistan has had a choice. It's always had a choice. There's a U.S. academic, a very famous academic called Daniel Markey. He testified before the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee in September, and he said that, look, Pakistan has always had the ability to shoot down the drones and cut off the supply lines. And it could very easily, without breaking a sweat, easily do that. And he added it still could.
So why is he not doing that? I mean, America is killing
because the rulers they're
killing his own people, isn't it?
The rulers have been given bribe money from America, aid money, and the aid money doesn't help the people of Pakistan. The people of Pakistan are as poor as now as they were 20 years ago.
But the aid money is crumbs. It's nothing.
It's nothing, absolutely. So this aid money only lines the pocket of these rulers. Really, at the end of the day, this is the reason why unfortunately they're blind to what Islam, the Deen, requires them to do, and they're subservient. They're slaves of America, really, in Pakistan.
So practically, you said, look, the only way we can solve the problem in Kashmir or in the Muslim world is removing these rulers. What's the practical principle? How can we do that? Because it's very nice to say, it's very easy to say, but it's very difficult to get rid of. Look at Syria, 5 years now, 6 years.
I think that the Muslims, we have to follow the example.
We don't want another. Sorry, I'm just going to cut you. We don't want another Syria in Pakistan, because that will completely
absolutely.
destroy Pakistan.
And this is not what I'm calling for. I think the best example, the best model for us is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have to look at his seerah. How did he bring about change in Makkah and Medina? And he used the intellectual discourse, the intellectual political struggle. And this is what we as Muslims have to engage in. We have to speak to our friends, we have to speak to our family in Pakistan, to other brothers and sisters around the world here in the UK, and we have to explain to them the difference between democracy and the Islamic Khilafah system, and we have to tell them that, we need to work for the Khilafah system. We have to follow the method of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Do you think the call for Khilafah is growing?
Absolutely. When you look at the statements from, Western leaders like Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney, George W. Bush, they talk about, and even Tony Blair, he talks about, the evil ideology, this totalitarian empire, the Islamic Caliphate. Google it. You will see them referring to the Caliphate. Why? Because they can sense it. They can sense it better than some of our people.
I've read a report by the CIA that had predicted the return of the Khilafah system within 20 years, and
by 2020.
ISIS is claiming Khilafah, but I think we've made
ISIS,
the point.
We reject ISIS because ISIS is not following the method of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it didn't get the bayah from the people. And
people of power.
Absolutely, the people of power, as they are known, and effectively, this is a very strange Khalifa that we have, that he cannot even appear in public before his people. They don't have security of that land. It doesn't fill the condition of a Khilafah.
I've got a lot of questions. Do you know what? I'm not going to take any more, because it will mean that we'll have to do another half an hour. I'll have to end it here, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. It's been an interesting discussion. Some points to maybe consider. Inshallah, this has been very educational and informative session. A very important issue that we need to discuss, and it needs to be discussed in our community and also with our relatives who are living in Pakistan and Indian subcontinent.
And I would add that any Pakistanis that here in the UK, we need to speak to them.
Definitely. So this session is available on our YouTube, so you can actually download it and share with your family, inshallah. I would like to thank the brothers for coming down. Brother Atif, thank you very much for coming down. Jazakallah khair.
Barakallah fi. I think it's been a pleasure for me to come onto your show and be able to share some of my thoughts with you.
Jazakallah khair. And a special thanks to all our listeners for listening and contributing to this show. I'm really sorry if I've missed your text. It's just we've had similar texts and so many of those, so I have to just pick those. Pick the good ones or the bad ones. I don't know. Anyway, you can follow us on Twitter at Middle Path Radio and continue with the discussion, inshallah. So Straight Talk is streamed live on internet, so you can listen via YouTube and through our app, which you can download, or you can go to our Straight Talk website, which is straight-talk.co.uk, and listen to any of our previous shows that you may have missed, inshallah. And don't forget to subscribe to our Middle Path Radio YouTube channel. Make sure you do that. Yeah, we need a lot of subscription. So all of the new shows, you can get a message when you do subscribe, inshallah. Again, thank you for listening to Middle Path Radio. Hope you have a nice evening. See you next Thursday. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.